Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Wallace, Associate Pastor for Faith Formation at the First Presbyterian Church of Libertyville. And I'm here to explain some of the changes to faith formation on Sunday mornings at First Pres this fall. There's no doubt that COVID has been a huge challenge for the church. But the disruption that COVID has caused also brings an opportunity to try something new, to be creative and innovative, to experiment with new ways of doing things that we think might actually work better in the long run than what we were doing before. And that's exactly how we're approaching the coming year of faith formation at First Pres. When we began to envision what that new way of doing things might look like, we asked ourselves, what do we want for the people in our church, especially for our kids, when it comes to faith formation? And the answer is pretty simple. We want to offer everyone who comes to our church a lifelong faith. That means we want to offer our kids a faith that they can grow into as adults, instead of one that they outgrow in their 20s and 30s. So with that goal in mind, we had to step back and ask, how do we do that? To answer that question, we had to find data. There have been several studies about what contributes to lifelong faith. In other words, these studies try to pinpoint the spiritual rhythms and practices of children and youth that increase the likelihood that they'll continue to be practicing Christians in their adulthood. There are, of course, many factors that contribute to lifelong faith, but we're focusing in on what we think are perhaps the three most important practices for lifelong faith: intergenerational relationships, participation in worship, and practicing faith outside of the church building. So let's walk through each of those practices in a little more detail. The first practice is to build meaningful intergenerational relationships that are grounded in our shared faith. This means that we want to structure our faith formation in ways that give our children and youth opportunities to build real relationships with adults in our church outside of their family. One study suggests that the magic number is somewhere around 5 to 7 relationships. In other words, kids who have at least 5 to 7 meaningful intergenerational relationships rooted in our shared faith are significantly more likely to remain practicing Christians as adults. And those meaningful relationships don't simply happen by putting people of different generations together in a room. They take intentionality, creating regular opportunities for meaningful interaction between generations. The second core practice is regular participation in worship. I've heard too many young adults tell me that they feel confused and out of place in church worship services, in part because they grew up going to Sunday school while their parents and other adults went to worship. So how can we change things for the next generation? How can we change their relationship to worship? It starts with their presence in worship. By making worship a consistent part of a child's spiritual experience, by explaining to them the meaning of the different elements of our worship service, and even by including them in our worship leadership, children slowly gain an understanding and appreciation for the central place of worship in our spiritual lives. The third practice is taking our faith back home, or more broadly, practicing faith outside of worship and other church activities. Generally speaking, parents are the most important spiritual influences in a child's life, more than pastors, more than peers, more than anyone else. When they've surveyed church-going Christian young adults and asked them to name the most important formative faith experiences of their childhood, most name faith experiences that involve their parents or other adults in their families. Those experiences include both faith practices done together as a family, for instance, a regular family devotion or prayer time, or service projects done together as a family as an act of faith. And they also include experiences of their parents living out their faith. For instance, it makes a real impression on kids when they see their parents regularly reading the Bible, praying, or serving their neighbors. we want to find ways to equip and encourage parents, grandparents, and other adults in our kids' lives to share their faith regularly outside of church. So, to recap, we want to create faith formation programs and experiences that encourage lifelong discipleship. And we believe that 3 of the most important ways to do that are by building intergenerational relationships, by including everyone in our worship, and by encouraging and equipping everyone to stay engaged in faith conversations and practices at home and in their everyday lives. So with that as our guide, we set out to create a Sunday morning experience that aspires to be a sort of incubator for lifelong faith. I'm so grateful to all of our faith formation teams, especially our Intergen Faith Formation Vision team, which is co-chaired by Jenny Bucciero and Deb Townander, for leading this work. This fall, we're excited to roll out a brand new faith formation experience. We're kicking it off on September 12th, and it's called Follow Me. Follow Me will happen on Sunday mornings before worship from 9 to 9:45. We'll begin each Sunday in Fellowship Hall with all generations together for an opening activity, from toddlers to nonagenarians. And if you're wondering if you are invited, you are. When we say all generations, we really mean it. Whether you are single or married, whether you're bringing kids or grandkids or no kids, whether you've been going to Bible study every week for the last 20 years or you haven't been to Sunday school since you were in 4th grade, you are welcome at Follow Me. So then, after spending about the first 20 minutes all together in Fellowship Hall, we'll split into 5 age groups: pre-kindergarten, lower elementary, upper elementary, middle school, and adults with high schoolers. Each Sunday will have its own theme, and all the content will be connected to it, so that no matter what age you are, we'll all be learning about the same thing. And we believe that's really critical for planting those seeds of meaningful intergenerational relationships. We'll be using a brand new curriculum published by the PCUSA that's designed for exactly this kind of faith formation experience. The entire year will be divided into 12 units, each one centered on a different practice that Jesus taught us to do as his disciples. Each of those units is about 4 weeks long. And so each Sunday within a unit, we will focus our attention on a different aspect of that practice and different Bible stories to help us understand it. Follow Me will wrap up at 9:45 on Sunday mornings, giving us about 15 minutes before worship begins. And here's the really cool thing. Our 10 a.m. worship services will center on the same practices and same Bible passages covered in Follow Me. During our 10 a.m. worship, we'll continue to offer a play-based learning experience for our preschoolers in one of the faith formation classrooms. We'll also have the nursery open for children under 3. Children in kindergarten and up will begin in worship, and they'll remain in worship a little longer than they did before. We think this is an important step towards inviting our children to deeper participation in our worship life. And we'll also be exploring ways for our kids to help lead in worship more often. Children in about 5th grade and up will be encouraged to stay for the entire worship service in the sanctuary or chapel. Then most Sundays, our children kindergarten through 4th grade will be invited to leave worship after the scripture readings and follow a few adult leaders back downstairs to Fellowship Hall for a kids' worship service. There, they'll continue with the same elements of worship that we follow in the sanctuary and chapel, just at their own level. Finally, we'll provide take-home resources for individuals and families to continue the discipleship practice and the conversation throughout the week. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I hope that you have a better grasp of what we're changing this year and why. These were not easy decisions for us to arrive at. It took a lot of research and conversation and prayer. It would have been easier for us just to go back to the way we did things before. But ultimately, we decided that the most faithful decision wasn't the easy decision. The faithful decision, we think, was to try something new, to try an approach to faith formation that we believe best prepares every person who walks through these doors for a lifelong faith journey. We know that this is a big change from what we're used to. And let's be honest, there will be some growing pains. And it'll take us some time to adjust and adapt to this new way of doing things. We'll make some adjustments as we go, and then next spring we'll begin to evaluate and make decisions about what to continue and what to change going forward. As we get all of this off the ground, we ask for your patience and your feedback. We ask for your graciousness and understanding when things don't go as we planned or hoped, but we also ask for your honest feedback and your ideas so that we can improve things and make faith formation work better for everyone in our church. Finally, if you want to learn more about our new curriculum, if you have questions about how things are going to work this fall, or if you want to throw out some of your own ideas about faith formation at First Pres, I invite you to join me and other faith formation leaders for a Zoom conversation on Sunday, August 22nd at noon. You can find a link for that Zoom in Parish Life or in our First Pres community Facebook group. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Blessings.